love Mexican. I love Mexican even more when I find a really easy recipe to make. And this is my recipe for Mexican meatloaf. So here's what you're gonna need. I've got about 3 pounds of meat here, 1 pound of pork and 2 pounds of beef just mixed in together. And we're gonna put in about 1/4 cup of corn niblets, about 1/4 to 1/2 diced poblano pepper, 1/2 of onion diced, and then about 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of carrots that have been sliced and diced. Then we're going to add to that 1/4 cup of ricotta cheese. Now I find that when you put ricotta cheese into meatloaf, it really smooths it out and gives it a nice texture. Of course, we have an egg to bind it. And shredded cheese, we've got a little bit of cheddar and some Monterey Jack, about 2 cups or so. And to give it that real Mexican flavor, you're going to want to use some Mexican spices. Now I've got my south of my border Mexican spice blend here, but if you don't have your own Mexican blend, you can use equal parts cumin, oregano, some chili powder, and garlic. And then of course some salt. And then we're going to baste the meatloaf with this great Mexican style tomato sauce. All I did was take a small can of tomato sauce that you find in your grocer's aisle, where you have tomato sauce, tomato paste, and all the canned vegetables. Then I added about 2 tablespoons of pineapple juice, 2 tablespoons of orange juice, the juice of 1/2 lime, and then about 1 tablespoon of my Mexican spices. I took that and put it on the stove, came to a slow boil, and then immediately turned it off and let it sit. We're just going to put the mixture of meat into the bowl, and then simply add all of our vegetables, starting with the corn. To this, we're going to add our 1/4 cup of ricotta cheese, about 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of this Mexican cheese blend, which again is cheddar and Monterey Jack. Then we're going to put the Mexican spices in there, about 2 tablespoons. In traditional meatloaf, you usually add a little bit of breadcrumbs, but since this is Mexican meatloaf, I'm going to crush and crumble 2 corn tortillas, and we're going to use those as our breadcrumbs in this recipe. When you crumble them, make sure they're pretty fine. You don't want large pieces of tortilla in your meatloaf. And finally, we're going to use 1 egg. And then with your hands, you're just going to get in there and start mixing everything. This is the fun about making meatloaf. Make sure everything is mixed thoroughly. So you've got pieces of corn, pieces of carrot, and spice throughout. And so once you're done mixing it all thoroughly, you can take it out, one fell swoop, place it in your greased meatloaf pan. Make sure it gets into all the corners nice and evenly. So once we've got our meatloaf laid out in the pan the way we want it, we're just going to spread some of that sauce over the top of it. Some Mexican tomato sauce. Just get a bunch of scoops out first and be really generous with this. And we're going to actually baste it one more time before it's done. So now we're ready to put it in the oven. I've set the oven to 350 degrees, and we're going to put it in there for just about 30 minutes or so. Then we're going to rebaste it, put the rest of the cheese on, and then cook it for another 15 minutes after that. So it's been about 30 minutes now, and we're going to take the meatloaf out of the oven. We're going to re-sauce it, put some cheese on it and some fresh cilantro, put it back in for about 15 more minutes. So what we're going to do, take some more of that sauce, spread it right over, just so we can get a double sauce on this. Finish the sauce. We're just going to throw the rest of the cheese on. You can put as little as much as you like. Obviously, more equals better taste. I like to put it straight down the middle. It gives it more aesthetically pleasing presentation. And then top it off with a little bit of fresh cilantro. And you're going to want to save a little bit of the cilantro for the end, because the longer you cook cilantro, the less flavor it has. So then we're ready to put it back in the oven for about 15 more minutes. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes since we sauced the meatloaf, and now it's ready to come out of the oven. Now, whenever you make meatloaf, you're going to always see this residual oil from the meats. What you do is just really carefully take it over to the sink and just carefully tilt it to drain most of it out of there. That's how you make Mexican meatloaf. I'm Jason Bailin from Whipped and Beaten Culinary Works.